Yeah, everyone was celebrating on X when they got 30 shots. It was like
air horns.
It was wild. You mentioned that they might stop and have the commissioner the puck, but look, I mean, the Washington Capitals took care of their chances. You mentioned enemy number one. Enemy number two might be Tom Wilson in these parts as well. I'm sure we'll get to that, but unfortunately, another game where the Canucks go into overtime and just can't get it done.
One win since Christmas now. They've got Quinn Hughes back, and he's doing all he can. He played a ton, although not so much in the first period. We'll talk more about that, but 3 minutes and 38 seconds of the 4:19 in overtime, so he came off the ice for one shift. Unfortunately, he wasn't out there as the puck went in, and so Quinn Hughes doing what he can to help this hockey club, but just getting the captain and their best player back, not enough. And as a result, they have one win since Christmas, and that came in a shootout, so no regulation victories since the holiday break. 18, 12, and 10 now on the season, double digits in that other column, 9 overtime losses and a shootout loss early in the season as well. So they're 4-10 in games that go beyond regulation time, but in games actually settle with a goal in overtime, the Vancouver Canucks are 3-9. So anyway you slice it, the overtime, they've left 9 points on the board. With the shootout loss to Philadelphia in the early going, that is 10 points that they have flushed down the toilet. Now they do get a single point, and look, there was a lot to like from the Canucks' performance in this hockey game. Didn't have a whole lot in the first period, and I don't know what Rick Tocchet said between first and second, but the Canucks set a season high for shots in a period with 21 in that second, and it took them to the final minute before they finally scored on a power play. And again, I liked the way that they stacked shifts in that second period. They really started to take the play to the Washington Capitals. You just wondered, is there enough finish in this lineup, especially without Elias Pettersson? Not that he's been scoring in bunches this year, but he is one of the guys when he's playing that's a candidate to put the puck in the net. But Connor Garland comes up the side of the net, the rebound bounces to him, and he makes no mistake with his 11th of the season. And so they boil it down to 20 minutes against the top team in the Eastern Conference, one of the top teams in the National Hockey League, highest scoring team in the National Hockey League coming in. And that's why I said there was a lot to like from the Vancouver Canucks. Could they push it across the finish line? And unfortunately for them, the answer is no. So they get another point, as they did in Montreal. 2 points in 2 games on this difficult road trip. That's fine, but single points, nickel and diming your way, that's not going to get it done at the end of the season. You have to find some ways to grind out victories.
And we talked about before this road trip started, right? Against Montreal, you can go and try and take care of business, get that one. Well, they don't. And now you enter the gauntlet of the big bad teams of the Eastern Conference. And they like you mentioned, there was a lot to like from the Canucks' performance. 30 shots on net. Their goaltender did play well. Guys had some chances. But again, for me, Jeff, it's the start. It's the start of the hockey game. It's the first period. It's not generating enough scoring chances. I mean, Noah Juleson with 1 of 3 shots in that first period, and it was 168 feet?
168 feet.
And that was on the PK.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the other shot was Jake DeBrusk's brilliant chance to start open the scoring, and Brock Besser, I don't even remember the shot. So 3 shots with a 4-minute power play. I think that's where it gets you the most. I think that's where a lot of fans are frustrated. You can mention the OT, you can mention the refereeing and all of that, but a 4-minute power play in the first period, and you were only able to generate 1 shot on net.
Yeah, and so let's pick that up, because the first period really was the most eventful period, even though it only had 1 goal and it came in the final minute. But this is the Washington Capitals are built for success. Like, they mean business this year, and their record underscores that. All this offensive firepower, but one of the highest scoring defenses in the National Hockey League. They've got this goaltending tandem, and they're alternating goalies. And tonight it was Logan Thompson, and you can see why his numbers are as good as they are. But they've got some heft up front. Obviously, Tom Wilson comes as advertised. You got Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was running around. Alexei Protas, who's 6'6", 230. Ovi's obviously a big man. There's a lot of size up front. And look, if you're playing the Vancouver Canucks, we say this all the time. Like, of course, you saw Nashville in the playoffs last year. Quinn Hughes means that much to the Canucks, especially in the absence of Filip Hronek and Elias Pettersson. So, yeah, guys are going to target Quinn Hughes. It's the way that Pierre-Luc Dubois went about it. Delayed penalty, and I think he felt at that point all bets were off. He could basically do what he wanted, and he wasn't going to get another penalty. And so, as most guys let up on the play, he takes a pretty healthy run at Quinn Hughes over on the sideboards and didn't really try to get Quinn's body, I didn't think. It looked like he tried to staple his legs essentially. I think there was a line that probably was crossed there. And so, Quinn pushed back. Kiefer Sherwood comes in. JT Miller's involved. It just so happened that Tom Wilson was on the ice. It got a little squirrely there. Was it Sherwood and Connor McMichael, I think, ultimately, that brief scrap. They didn't get fighting majors, but, the temperature went from 0 to 100 and in a real hurry there. I like the fact that the Canucks stuck up for their captain. They had to. I mean, there's no other option. But the offshoot is, as you mentioned, they get a 4-minute power play out of it, and Quinn Hughes, he takes a 2-minute penalty. That was one of the real sort of head scratchers on the night, was Quinn had to serve 2. The Canucks just had to go offside or flip the puck to the goaltender to get a stoppage, and you get your captain, your best player back for the second part of the power play. Instead, Quinn Hughes sat in the penalty box for 6 minutes and 22 seconds of game action.
And the crazy part about that, he finished the night with 27 minutes of ice time, Jeff. That's the craziest part of that. They still lost this game. So, yeah, I mean, look, the referees were going to take 2 guys. They picked 2. They picked the 2 that were off to the side, and it was obviously Hughes and PLD. But, yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you how important this player is for the team. And, yes, like you mentioned, they probably should have tried to not ice the puck, obviously, but that wouldn't let you do it. But it would get the puck on net. Give it to Lankin and let him cover it. Take an offensive zone draw on the power play. Be able to win that faceoff, anything. And the Canucks weren't able to do it. But, again, 1 shot on the power play, not good enough. Just not generating enough shots. And I think that's the biggest thing. We sit here and we talk about why it's so stagnant, what's wrong with it. They just don't put pucks on net. And I think that's their biggest problem.
Yeah, and they had the night against Nashville, the home game here where they got shut out. Now, they didn't have Quinn Hughes in the lineup and didn't get a single power play shot that night. Here they had 4 minutes, and as you said, JT Miller sets up Jake DeBrusk, driving to the net, good opportunity, and Logan Thompson made probably his best. I mean, he only had to make 3 saves in the first period, so I think without a doubt that was his best save. But yeah, it's just so much perimeter passing, and again, we talk about this all the time, and nothing seems to change here. Yes, they're missing Elias Pettersson, but otherwise, their best players are there and available to them, and they've got the captain back. Not for that first power play, but they've got to find, I don't care, this is the NHL, you got to funnel pucks to the net and make goaltenders make some stops along the way. Whatever the case, so they give up the late goal in the first period, down 1-0, 5th straight game now, 7 of the last 8, they're back to this routine of falling behind. I don't think you put this in the category of a bad start necessarily. The Canucks realize that they're taking on a top team, and I think they were doing their best to try to play a pretty tight road game. They didn't get scored on early like they did the other night in Montreal, but they give up the first goal, and at that point you're chasing. So again, I like the second period an awful lot. I want to give credit where it's due here. I just don't know where they've been hiding that period, and if you play more periods like that and get 21 shots, you're bound to get a bounce here or there and find a way to squeeze a few pucks through. So hopefully they bottle up the second period and take it with them the rest of the road trip. They're going to need it going into Carolina and Toronto and Winnipeg before they're through here. So only gets tougher from here as they move along. And 2 points in 2 games, sure, you'll take that. But again, at some point, if they're going to climb the ladder, they've got to find a way to pocket 2 points on a few of these nights.
I agree. Chat's lit. There are a lot of people saying a lot of different things. Tyler Myers in overtime, nobody likes, Jeff. Eric Brandstrom, people want to see him. Noah Juleson, he ended up taking that penalty with Tom Wilson off in overtime there, or just before overtime as well, after Tom Wilson smoked Connor Garland behind the net.
Right.
Yeah, so there was that as well. A lot of game within the game here. JT Miller getting hurt. That kind of was an interesting one that, we had to keep a close eye on if he was going to be able to come out for the third period or not when he kind of took that shot along the boards. So, we also have a super chat from KC Shuffle. Is it coaching malpractice to not have Brandstrom in the lineup at this point? He's got 8 points in his -4 compared to Juleson 000-9.
Malpractice, that seems a little strong.
Maybe a little harsh word.
But again, we come back to this idea that the lineup you're using right now isn't working for you. Now, they didn't give up. Capitals are the highest scoring team in the league, and they held them to 1 goal in regulation and 2 on the night. So they did what a lot of teams haven't been able to do. And more than the goals against, they held them to 18 total shots. Like Kevin Lankinen, he didn't have to stand on his head in this hockey game. The Canucks did a nice job. You probably heard of this Alex Ovechkin character and the chase that he's on. Ovi plays 17-55. He had 3 shots on goal. had 8 attempts. He had an overtime opportunity as well, but doesn't find the back of the net, so he stays on 19 goals and is 22 back of Wayne Gretzky. But the Capitals have all these weapons, Dylan Strome and Connor McMichael, and we've talked about the season that Tom Wilson is having, and Protas is having this breakout season. They've got all these weapons, and for the most part, the Canucks did a pretty decent job here. So this wasn't so much about the way they defended, it was the lack of offense at the other end of the ice. And there's sort of a pattern here. Or if you go back to the Calgary game on New Year's Eve, Brock Besser scored a third-period power play goal, but no goals at 5-on-5. They go to Seattle, they score a bunch of goals, they win in a shootout. Nashville game, they get shut out.
Yeah.
They go to Montreal, score a bunch of goals. Sort of every other game right now, this Canuck team is really struggling. So the Besser goal in Calgary is on the power play. No goals against Nashville. Garland goal tonight on the power play. 3 of the last 5 games, they have not scored a goal at 5-on-5. It's a difficult way to live, and it's certainly a difficult way to win in the National Hockey League.
So take the over on Friday is what you're saying, that the Canucks are going to score a lot of goals against the Carolina Hurricanes.
But just back to, and thanks for the contribution as well in the Super Chat. Malpractice seems like a strong word. I'm not certain that this is their optimal lineup. And if Erik Brannstrom's biggest crime is that he's shorter than the rest of the guys, I do think that coaching staff and management have to step back and say, how's this working for us? Like, are the guys that we're putting out there, whether it's a power play, if you have Brannstrom in your lineup and Quinn Hughes is off for 6 minutes, maybe Erik Brannstrom can step in and run the power play better than Tyler Myers can. Or, in overtime, if you're looking to spell off Quinn Hughes and you want somebody else out there that thinks some offense, maybe a guy like Erik Brannstrom would fit the role better than some of the other players that they've got. So it is questionable. I know that the defensive metrics maybe aren't the greatest for Erik Brannstrom, but he brings an element that far too few of the rest of the guys that play on the regular bring to the mix here.
Yeah, I also think this one, just kind of the way the game went, there was a lot of after the whistle stuff, there was a lot of gooning around. Maybe Brannstrom's not the guy that they wanted to be out there for this one, and maybe that led into a decision of it's a big and heavy team. Washington's the biggest team in the league, right? I think they are.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think the Capitals are the biggest team in the league, so maybe that kind of went into consideration. But you have to, if you're Rick Tocchet, you have to seriously consider bringing this player back into the lineup. I mean, yes, the good news of Philip Roenick, he's going to be doing the conditioning stint with the Abbotsford Canucks and practicing with them. So eventually, at some point, he's going to come back. But before then, you're still going to have to play these games. And I really do believe that Erik Brannstrom needs to get back into this lineup.
I think you raise a decent point, though, that sometimes you ice your lineup based on the opponents and their skill set and the way that you think they're going to play. And so, to have Forbort and Desharnais and Juleson and Myers and Soucy, the Canucks feel, okay, they stack up with 5 of their 6 defensemen, that can stand up to the sort of push and the shove. And we saw a little bit of that, after Dubois with his hit on Hughes comes out of the penalty box, but all of a sudden he still can't play because Vincent Desharnais is taking a penalty, trying to exact a little bit of revenge on PLD. And so it wasn't just that Hughes sat in the penalty box for 6 minutes. It was then they were penalty killing, and he's not a penalty killer. So, yes, I understand the thinking, I suppose, but I don't know. It is time to free Erik Brannstrom again, I think, at some point here.
Free Brandy,
and give him an opportunity. We should mention as well that the Capitals are in Vancouver in 2 weeks' time. So I have to think there'll be a little carryover from the heat that was in this game. And I know the crowd will be all over Pierre-Luc Dubois, and we'll see sort of how things shake down on the 25th, the Saturday night, at Rogers Arena. Let's just go back to the first goal of the game. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of goals to get through in this game. We'll get to the 3 stars coming up shortly. But Dubois opens the scoring in the final minute of the first period. Puck is kept in at the Canuck line. Capitals move the puck in behind the net, work it around a little bit, and shot on goal bounces off Lankin up high in the air. Brock Besser tries to grab it, misses it, and Dubois in the right spot to sort of knock it down, move to the front of the net, and beats Lankin on the backhand. And I hear Rick talking all the time, talking about boxing out. Tyler, if anybody's going to reach for a jump ball, you'd want it to be Tyler Myers.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he has moved across the ice following his man. Quinn Hughes is sort of trapped in no man's land. And I guess I would say to Brock Besser, if you're going to make a play to bat it with your glove, you better get it.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And it fell to Dubois, who was able to put it in for his 6th of the season, his first of 2 on the night.
Yeah, Pierre-Luc Dubois is what? Almost a few inches taller than Brock Besser, so you definitely saw that. But yeah, it's one of those things where you look at this game, Jeff, and you just kind of see where the Canucks are lacking, and it definitely did show there tonight.
So they fall behind again, as we said, but I wouldn't chalk it up to a terrible start other than the power play that didn't generate a whole lot. A little bit of concern with about 4 minutes to go in the first period. Martin Fehervary takes JT Miller into the end boards pretty heavily. Miller could see was favoring his left arm as he skated through the neutral zone and then headed back to the bench. Now, stayed in the game, finished the game, was out there on the ice. In fact, was the lone man back as Protas brought the puck into the Canucks zone for the overtime winner, but they've had enough guys banged up. JT's already missed enough time this year. You didn't want to see him back on the shelf. So I assume the fact that he finished the game that he's going to be okay, but we thought that about Dakota Joshua the other night, and he's now on IR. So we'll see if we get any update on JT Miller after this hockey game, but a few dicey moments there late in the first period.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully JT Miller's okay. That would be the worst thing to happen for this team if they have another center go down. And we saw it in overtime. JT Miller off the boards. Who's the second player off the boards after that? Pia Suter. And like you mentioned earlier before we did the show, he's a guy that's just gone awfully quiet for this hockey club of late. And that's kind of the thing that you look at, guys just going quiet. Now, I know Connor Garland's got 2 goals in his last 4 games, but before that, pretty quiet as well. So the story of this team lately has just been guys needing to step up. You like the effort tonight. You like the fact that they got 30 shots, but who can finish and who is able to finish? And as this road trip goes on, we're going to quickly find out. I mean, they're going to get Elias Pettersson back at some point. The way that he's not been able to finish lately, is he going to be the guy? So we're going to have to see what happens here.
All right, well, let's get to the 3 stars of this hockey game, and we'll tell you our 3 stars in a moment. The 3 stars in the building, Logan Thompson is named the first star by the Washington Capitals media. Pierre-Luc Dubois, guy scores the only 2 goals for the Capitals in the winner in overtime, and he's not the first star. Thompson was good, especially in that second period. And defenseman Matt Roy is the 3rd star.
What?
Yeah, apparently. I'd have to look at his numbers. I didn't really notice him, but he played 21 minutes. Like, their big 2, Chychrun and Carlson, play way more than that. Anyways, those are the 3 stars in the building. 3 stars here on Rink Wide. Pierre-Luc Dubois, Logan Thompson, and we'll go Connor Garland, who scores his 11th of the season, mixing it up at the final buzzer in the 3rd period, along with Tom Wilson, giving up half a foot or more and probably about 40 pounds, but not going to back down from anybody. So Connor Garland finds the range there. And you were mentioning a moment ago about who are the candidates to score right now for the Canucks. We know that JT finally broke a 12-game drought and scored for the first time on a goaltender since October the other night. Doesn't back it up offensively. Relatively quiet night for Brock Besser. Jake DeBrusk had the one chance early, but not a whole lot going there. You get past those guys, and then it's fair to ask, honestly, who are your candidates to score? And Pia Suter, who, look, he had an incredible 20-game stretch there, sort of from the start of November through the middle of December. I think all 11 of his goals came in a 20-game stretch. But he's been elevated in the absence of, first JT Miller and now Elias Pettersson. 14 games without a goal, 7 games without a point, and just 2 points in his last 14 games. We know that he's not a top 6 center by design. Mm-hmm. He's a complementary piece who does a nice job. He's got the hockey chops and the hockey smarts to fill in. And when he's a complementary piece on a line with Miller and Besser, he brings an element to a line like that can help them go. When you're asking him to be a top 2 center in the absence of the other guys, it's pretty apparent that it's just not happening for Pia Suter. So, he's gone quiet. We know about Höglander's struggles, Danton Heinen, Teddy Bluger, on and on it goes. And so, good teams get goals from their top end guys and then also get a wave of secondary scoring. And right now the Canucks aren't getting a ton of primary scoring, and they're not getting a lot from the secondary guys either. Now, Suter did have a chance. It was Garland's shot from the right side. Thompson made a save. It came to Suter at the side of the net, and he kind of pitchforked it, maybe in a little too deep. That was in the second period when they were down 1-0, so he had an opportunity there. Max Sasson looked like he was going to have a breakaway, but Höglander just offside as he moved the puck to the middle of the ice. And then we talk about the Garland goal. What about the sequence that led to the power play that put the Canucks up a man? Like, that was complete chaos. There were so many good opportunities. Ovechkin lost his stick. Then Logan Thompson lost his stick as well. And the Canucks did everything but put the puck in the net. Quinn Hughes had an opportunity. Pius Suter, again, can't buy a goal right now. But it was complete and utter chaos. And ultimately it led to a Washington penalty that put the Canucks on the power play.
But that's what it took. It took two guys losing a stick and for the Canucks to realize that, you know what, there's maybe more we can do. Fire pucks on net, to be able to get and wreak and create havoc and do things like that. So you hope that, they can carry that over because like we talked about, like you just mentioned off the top of the show, that second period. If you can bottle that second period and do whatever you did in that period and somehow find some consistencies in your game there, that's a recipe for success on this road trip.
The 3 stars were brought to you by Greta Bar YVR. We talk about it on every episode, and hopefully you've had a chance to check it out for yourself. If you have, you know what we're talking about, and if you haven't, well, you're missing out on all the big screens, the arcade games, the terrific new street food menu, weekly drink specials, Canucks Army viewing party coming up later this month. We'll tell you more about that in a few more minutes, but hey, we hope that you make plans to visit Greta Bar. It's the place to be, 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. So the Canucks go to that late power play in the second period and, work the puck around. What a difference it makes having Quinn Hughes out there and available to you when you're working the man advantage, and Connor Garland off to the side of the net. Hughes and Miller get the assists. The opening goal by Dubois came at 19:27 of the first period. The Garland goal comes at 19:23 of the second period. So final minute goals for each team. Garland's 11th of the season, and it's only game 40. So Connor Garland has had a really nice season. And now with 11 goals before the midway mark, certainly on pace for 20. And, if he can pick it up a little in the second, if they can get healthy and get everybody back, maybe take a run at a 25-goal season. We'll see what happens there. But still, I think Connor Garland in the first half has been consistent. He's been healthy. He's been available and came through for them to put them on even terms in a game that they were starting to take over. And so, for all the talk of this difficult road trip, I'm thinking to myself, after 2 periods, the Canucks have boiled this thing down against one of the NHL's heavyweights to a 20-minute game. They had a real chance to get 3 of 4 points from the first 2 games of this road trip. Again, they get a single point for another overtime loss. It's not the end of the world, but at some point, that has to be frustration. They know that they've got enough top-end talent when these games get to overtime that you just think at some point it has to swing their way, but it hasn't for a long, long time. And so they go to that third period. Third period was fairly even. As I look through my opportunities, the notes that I took, PDG, who doesn't take many penalties, and I think that's one of the things that I commend him about. He hasn't played a lot of games for the big league Canucks this year, but he's able to be aggressive on the forecheck, take the man, but not take many penalties. Just his second penalty of the season got called for tripping, and so the Canucks had to go to the penalty kill. They dodged that bullet, did a pretty nice job there. And then as I look, Max Sasson had that deflection of a Vinny Desharnais shot with about 7.5 to go. Thompson looked behind him. I think he thought maybe
it was going.
Yeah. And then Jonathan Lekaramaki, about 5.5 minutes to go, looking for goals in back-to-back games. And again, Thompson was forced to make a stop there. So didn't notice the rookie an awful lot in this game. Certainly not like we did the other night in Montreal. But it didn't hurt the hockey club playing with Miller and Besser. But just not as noticeable. A couple of shots, finishes at 12 minutes and 15 seconds of ice time. What a story it would have been had he been able to pot a third period goal to put the Canucks in front. But alas, it was not to be.
No, absolutely. Someone else in our chat, Canucks are still a good team. If you reverse their overtime record, they would be a point behind the Oilers, and you think it was business as usual. And that's kind of the case when you take games to overtime and kind of roll the dice there. But the Canucks have just not been able to finish games. And finish games in regulation and when going into overtime, there's definitely have the talent to do it. There's players on this roster that can put the puck in the net, but it's the unfortunate part of the business, right? Where you aren't able to do it, and you get the loser point, and you take your chances. So, yes, I agree with you there that if you reverse it, it would be all hunky-dory, and we would be happy talking about it. But we have to sit here and, like you mentioned, it's going to go their way at some point. Things are going to turn. You like to think, but when?
Right, and I guess I try to be a little more practical about it. And instead of saying, hey, reverse it, even if they 50%.
Yeah.
Like the 10 overtime losses, if they had got five of those points, they would be battling with the Oilers and the Kings instead of looking over their shoulder at the Calgary Flames and the Utahs and St. Louis and the other teams that are trying to reel them in. The single point again for this night, it's fine. It helps the Canucks. All points are good points and obviously better than getting nothing. Now, it would have been interesting had Calgary and Los Angeles played, but the NHL doing the wise thing with just the terrible wildfire situation down in Los Angeles. So Flames, ironically, at Kings, that game's postponed. Those teams are going to play again on the weekend, regularly scheduled game. It's supposed to be back-to-back in Calgary, but they have to make this one up. So Calgary's not in action on this night. Canucks pull a single point ahead of the Calgary Flames. 46 points for the Canucks, 45 for the Flames. St. Louis has 42, Utah with 41. So that's the standings right around the playoff bar. Canucks will spend another night above the playoff bar in the West, but again, instead of putting a little distance between themselves and some of those teams in the chase pack, a single point, but you scratch another game off the board, and so 40 down and 42 to go. They'll reach the midway mark on Friday when they take on Carolina in the third stop of this 5-game road trip.
Gordon McDowell, this and the Habs game were the two most watchable games in a while for the Canucks.
Well, the Montreal game was fun.
Yeah,
certainly.
it was because it was fun.
Yeah, and so was the Ottawa game just before Christmas.
Yep.
There have been a few. Watchable tonight. I loved the Heat in the first period. And, again, I don't know what's changed with the Canucks, but we're starting to see them engage a little more physically than we did earlier in the season. And I don't have an issue with that. It'd be nice if they had a guy like Dakota Joshua on their lineup, one of the bigger forwards that they've got at their disposal. But, I didn't think anybody backed down here. And a guy like Kiefer Sherwood, I thought, did his part to try to send a message that, they
weren't going to be bullied.
Well, yeah, you can't take a run at the captain after the whistle like that. So, but on an entertainment scale, credit to the Canucks, they held Washington to 2 shots in the third period.
Yep.
Didn't have scoring chances anywhere that I jotted down my own notes. And then, so the game is off to overtime. And again, the Canucks have to know, and I don't know if it's a confidence thing. Every overtime is different. I don't think you could come up with a blanket statement why the Canucks have the record they do. They lost 13 seconds into an overtime against Ottawa. They lost in the dying seconds of an overtime in Utah. This one is into the final minute. You play for your grade A opportunities, and when you get them, you better take them. The Canucks didn't really generate much. Brock Besser had a shot that was blocked early in overtime. Canucks were credited with 1 overtime shot. But if the Capitals had 5 OT shots.
Yeah.
Ovi off the rush, and then Jacob Chikrin wide open down Main Street on a breakaway. How come the Canucks can't generate those kinds of looks? Both teams have 3 players. There's a lot of ice out there.
Because Quinn Hughes can't be on the ice for 5 minutes of overtime.
No, he's out for 3:38.
Yeah, he almost can.
Yeah, but that comes back to how thin it gets after the very top of the lineup. And then, unfortunately, you saw what happened on the winner. Protas carries the puck in. JT Miller's the lone man back. JT follows him behind the net, fine. But you can't have the other 2 guys on the ice go to the corner as well. And it was at Myers and DeBrusk, I think. And they get caught puck watching. I just said a moment ago, you can't come up with a blanket statement. One that would apply for a lot of the Canucks' losses in overtime, though, is puck watching. It just feels like they get locked onto the puck, and the minute that happens, you're leaving guys wide open. And at this level, you get guys that have time and space more often than not. They're going to stick the knife in, and that's what Pierre-Luc Dubois did. So why all 3 Canucks were over in the corner when Dubois was wide open, but he showed some nifty hands. I know Canuck fans don't want to give him any credit, but that's a nice move to end this thing in overtime.
Yeah, and I think that, you mentioned that. If you get caught watching, that's it. Every single team in the NHL, especially in overtime, is going to burn you. And the Canucks don't have good enough skaters to come back and be able to track guys that especially are coming down the wing fast. And Dubois, great hands. Well, you can't blame anyone else, Kevin Lankin on that. He's able to come in and score. But yeah, JT Miller around the net there and kind of just gets lost. And the other 2 defenders, just in no man's land, right? You have to know where you are. We talk about guys knowing where they are when taking penalties and putting your sticks in the wrong position, but knowing who's on the ice and knowing where you are in overtime is probably the most important thing.
Well, I've seen a lot of people asking in social spaces about the overtime record in the NHL. The record is 18 OTLs in a season. Do the Canucks get there? They're at 10 at the midway mark. I guess there are 9 overtimes and then the shootout. But the crazy part for me in all of this is I think this is the new norm. That if it feels like the Canucks go to overtime every game, you're not far off. 6th time in 10 games, 10th time in their last 19. So the cliche about hockey's a 60-minute game, forget it. When it comes to the Canucks, you got to tack on a few extra minutes at the very least. You have to brace for overtime. So, as they get into the second half of the season, and we always talk about games tightening up, goals harder to come by, if they've been to overtime this often and they've been in all these close games this often in and around Christmas and the New Year, then it probably stands to reason that this isn't just a phase that they're in. I don't know. Maybe we're going to watch them wind up on the wrong side of history here when all is said and done.
It would be a feat that is not a good one to reach if you're the Vancouver Canucks this season. Carl on X, Alvin has called out Pettersson and JT Miller, but when is he going to take accountability for the trash decor he envisioned? We have no choice but to play Myers in overtime. Brock's foot speed is a concern. I don't want to invest long term. There's a lot there.
Yeah, I do wonder about Brock as an overtime threat.
Yeah.
Like if the puck's on his stick in a shooting position, sure. But with all that much time and space and other guys wheeling around in a frantic pace, can he get to the point where he is an overtime threat? And I think the numbers bear it out that, JT scored an overtime winner in Florida early in the season. And then Connor Garland in Buffalo and Jake DeBrusk in Detroit back-to-back games. Those are their 3 overtime wins. Like, Brock sees the ice a fair bit in overtime, but, he hasn't been a difference maker in overtime. And I do wonder a little bit, I don't want to get into sort of philosophical question long-term. We talk about him and his contract status. We'll leave that for another day. But just in terms of overtime, what they're doing, the personnel they're using, it's not working for them. So it comes back to that thing about banging your head against the wall over and over and over. If you're going to keep throwing the same guys over the boards, are you asking for the same results? It kind of feels that way. And so, if you're Rick Tocchet, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. We know that he doesn't trust a guy like Nils Höglander.
Yeah.
But Höglander has some quickness. He's got some foot speed. Might it be worth taking a look at him? Again, if you're losing with the guys that you think are going to help you, what do you have to lose, essentially?
He doesn't play the top. He doesn't
Kiefer
play
Sherwood's starting to get a few more looks in overtime. I get that. Connor Garland, obviously. But the only guy that they're really missing is Elias Pettersson. And would he get overtime shifts? Sure. But again, he hasn't scored an overtime winner when he has been in the lineup. Otherwise, this is who they are. And maybe this is part of the concern that, they're just not built. Like even a Max Sasson, like a guy that's got some quickness. Could you not find a shift or two? I know he's a rookie, but it's not working for you. So it kind of feels like maybe it's time to get back to the drawing board and look at a few other things here. I saw Angelo say that the entire team's got Mikheyev syndrome. Now it's not time.
Scores.
Yeah, tonight's not the night to say that because Ilya Mikheyev got his 8th of the season tonight in a Chicago win over the Colorado Avalanche. So he got off to a dreadful start, but he's up to 8 near the midway mark, which isn't a terrible pace for a guy that looked like he may never score again in the National Hockey League when he finished up as a Canuck late last season.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, good for him playing with Connor Bedard and getting opportunities there. Quinn Hughes plays a lot in overtime, the captain of this hockey team, and we do have some Quinn Hughes now post-game if we can get to that.
It's the team's best game in a while.
Yeah, we played well, competed, and yeah.
What do you think you did well, just to kind of contain them from getting shots, especially in the second period there?
I think we just worked really hard. Our compete level was high, made plays, had looks. I don't know.
How frustrating is it not to get more of the bonus point in overtime?
It's frustrating, but can't sulk about it. It is what it is. It's what it's how it went, and 3 games left to still salvage and make it a good road trip.
What was the explanation as to how you got a minor in that scrum?
I don't know. Obviously frustrating because I'm in the box 3 minutes longer than Dubois. I don't know how that happens, and but that's just the way it played out.
The guys were in quick in that scrum. Do you think that maybe got everyone's attention and upped the intensity?
Yeah, we invested, so.
In terms of that investment, just I know it's been a bit of a skid results-wise, but given the intensity of the game tonight, the fact that you're able to grind out a result against a team, is there something you take from the way your group competed?
Yeah, well, I think we're a good team, so they're a good team, but we're a good team too, and we've battled through a lot of adversity this year. I don't think we've had our full lineup, yet this year. But guys are playing really hard right now, and we're a good team too, so we expect to get 2 points against a team, any team.
From your perspective, well, midway through the second period,
In the sense of,
you guys competing in take it to them, carry play?
I mean, games are going to have ebbs and flows. Like you said, they're a good team, so they're going to have pushes, and we got to come back with a push of our own.
There you go, Quinn Hughes. You can tell, disappointed obviously in the result, trying to find some of the positives, and there were. Again, yes, they lose again in overtime, but that second period, where they've been hiding sort of that sort of territorial play, need to see more of it, and we'll see if they can bring it along to Carolina and into Toronto and Winnipeg. How much does Quinn Hughes mean to this team? You know the answer to that, but statistically, at 5-on-5 in this hockey game, the Canucks outshot the Capitals 18-6 when the captain was out there. Again, just tilts the ice in the Canucks' favor, and I think that has to be part of the frustration here is how do you harness that? How do you make that mean more than it does when you're spending that much time and he's making other teams miss and creating space for himself and for his teammates? And ultimately, the only goal they score is on the power play. So another night that they aren't able to capitalize 5-on-5. 27 minutes and 13 seconds for a guy, as we said off the top, spent 6.5 minutes in the penalty box. Another very busy night for Quinn Hughes. And we saw on Monday in Montreal, he's back, but the hand is still bandaged and has the gadget on it. He's not 100%, but you couldn't tell by watching him.
No. And he's always pretty accountable post-game. Like, you're going to get complete honesty from Quinn Hughes about where he assesses his team and their play and where they need to be better and where he needs to be better. But, you can definitely tell he was a little pissed after that one. We do have Rick Tocchet as well before that.
Well, we'll get to Rick Tocchet in a sec. I just want to get to the stat that stands out from this hockey game, and then we'll hear from the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. And, we've mentioned it a couple times here, but for all the talk here on this show and others and in social spaces as well about the lack of shots for the Vancouver Canucks. That's a big, bold green 21 there. New season high for shots in a period. The Canucks had 21 in the second period. So it can be done. We talked about the fact that they crested 30 shots for the first time. I think it was 15 games. I think you got to go back. I want to say I'd have to go look it up. I'm not even sure which game it was, but it's been a while since they got to the 30-shot mark. But you get to 30 when you have 21 in one period. So, again, you're not going to get that every night. That's why it is a season high for a period. It is sort of the outlier. But, again, if there's just sort of this idea that, hey, we can generate shots, we can put shots in the net, then let's see if they're able to continue that on. Somebody had asked me as well, how many times have they reached 30 shots in a game? Surprisingly, this is the 10th time in 40 games. I think that would surprise some people that feel like this is the second or third time it's happened all season. 37 in Anaheim in a win over the Ducks. That is the season high. They don't come close to 37, but they finish with 31 out shooting the Capitals. 31-18 on the night. So, 21 shots in a period. Absolutely a stat that stands out. All right, let's hear from the head coach, interested in his take. You made the very astute observation that this might be the least hair behind the benches between two head coaches.
On their head. Rick's got some on his face.
Fair enough, but Spencer Carberry might look sort of over at Rick Tocchet and think, that's what I'm going to look like in about 20 years. It's sort of like the age enhancement. So, yes. Spencer Carberry's Capitals get the win. Rick Tocchet's Canucks take a single point, and they'll pack their bags, move on to face the Hurricanes on Friday. Let's hear from Rick Tocchet after the 2-1 overtime loss.
One goal loss, but I can't imagine there was much you didn't like about tonight's game.
Yeah, I played a good hockey. Yeah, I played a good hockey game. It's a top team in the league, and I thought we did a nice job. Guys worked hard.
I know you were a big fan of Quinn Hughes before he hurt whatever he hurt, but how much do you appreciate what he's done these last couple of games? With
Yeah, I mean, he just controls a play. He can make those big moment plays. So, yeah, I mean, we're lucky. We got him 100%.
What did you see in the second period there when you really kind of made that push?
I just thought we were connected. We spent a couple of days really evaluating our team a little bit and how we want to play, and I thought everybody kind of bought into, how we have to play with our team right now, the identity. So I thought there was a lot of guys doing a lot of good things.
Took a long time to sort out the penalties in the first period on that fracas. Did you get an explanation on why Quinn got a minor there?
No, I think Quinn tried to explain it, but he didn't know. I honestly don't know. The refs just said, hey, you're getting a 4-minute penalty. And then he said, you're going to have Quinn for the last 2. And I said, I'd rather have him for the 4. So why take him? But yeah, it's, they're good refs. Didn't really matter, yeah.
If you find yourself in that spot again where Hughes' penalty's expired, but he can't leave the box, will you consider, the shoot and skate fast at the goalie, get the stoppage?
When he was in the box? Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things, obviously he's playing a ton. Can you use a timeout? There's a lot of factors that you can look at when you have a guy like Hughes.
When you talk about that game, whether it was that first period, whether it was Wilson and Garland late, or just all the hits thrown throughout, not a lot of space, a lot of physicality, just to sort of see a team that maybe hasn't got results perform that way tonight. What do you draw from that?
Well, that's a big team. They're a gritty team, and I thought a lot of our guys, hung in there. I like that. We had some opportunities there in the third period to get the go-ahead goal, and it's unfortunate what happened at the end, but it was 40 seconds away from shootout. So, yeah, I like I said, we got to build off this and keep playing to the identity. And like I said, I didn't think everybody kind of did something, contribute tonight, which is big for our team.
And I've asked you before about the 3-on-3, but when you look at it in total, do you think, how can we not have more wins in all the games you've been to?
Because of why? What do you mean?
Well, you've lost a lot of games in overtime.
Right.
You haven't won many games in overtime.
Right.
Is it hard to believe with what you have on this team that you haven't won more games in overtime?
Well, with can't play Hughes the whole game. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. We had some chances. Unfortunate what happened. So.
Not game related, but Phil was assigned to Abbotsford on conditioning loan earlier today. Hronek.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's sort of the plan for him? And is that just you guys are on the road and have a condensed schedule, not a lot of practice time, so get him on the ice with you?
Well, I think he's been really training hard, really hard. Now I don't know if it's accelerated the date, but I will say he's expedited a lot of things because of the way he's worked. So I give him a lot of credit, and he'll be going down there and practicing. So I don't know when he's going to be back, but I will tell you he's expedited a lot of things on his rehab.
All right, there you go. Rick Tocchet at the end talking about Phil Hronek and his agent, Alan Walsh, making it abundantly clear on social media that he won't be playing, but he's going to practice, which is, again, a great step in his development or his return and his recovery from the injuries, and it was upper body and lower body. So he'll practice with the Abbotsford Canucks while the big league Canucks are on the road, and then we'll see where he is and where they are when they come off the road trip. A couple of things from Rick Tocchet there. One is Thomas Drance tried to ask him about getting a stoppage on the power play to get Quinn, to spring Quinn Hughes so that you could have had him. Tocchet didn't really seem to, I don't know if he didn't get the question there or follow the logic. Talked about calling his timeout, but it was continuous play. You couldn't call your timeout. It was more about, it's interesting though, because how often do we hear Tocchet talk about all these sort of fundamentals of the game, line changes and things like that? That felt like it should have been a fundamental, whether it was the coaches barking at the players or the players themselves. Just go offside, dump the puck in on the goaltender, whatever, spring the captain so that he could run the power play. So that really did feel like a missed opportunity. Didn't seem to want to get to Ian McIntyre's questions there about the overtime record. But he has to look at it and see the 10 there in the OTL category and think, that's just a lot of points that we have left on the table.
Well, that and also in the back of his mind, maybe reinforcements coming at some point, which is Elias Pettersson. But we know Kiz kind of struggles this season as well. Dakota Joshua, who knows when he's going to come back. Thatcher Demko obviously was able to back up. So if he's able to back up, he's probably good enough to play here at some point over the next few days. So yeah, but lots to get into there from Rick Tocchet.
The other thing that I really sprung to my attention was where he said, we spent the last couple of days evaluating who we are as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there was a lot to like in the Montreal game. You know, they scored enough, 4 goals on the road. That should be enough to get you a win. Unfortunately, it was defensive breakdowns, penalty kill the other night. So it's kind of when they address one area, another one sort of pops up here, and through it all, there's just been this inconsistency. And maybe the most consistent thing is that they get to overtime, they get their single points, they're just not able to decide games in their favor. He also said, we were 40 seconds away from a shootout. Well, I don't think that's any guarantee.
There's no guarantees there either.
Exactly. I know they beat Seattle in a shootout last week, but I'm not sure that that's the game when you look at the weapons on the other side for the Washington Capitals. Although the Caps lost in a shootout in their last game to Buffalo, so it is a crapshoot, and we'll see how it all shakes out. Now, you mentioned Elias Pettersson there.
Yes.
This is getting to be interesting now, because of course at Christmas, the San Jose game before Christmas, he left. Quinn Hughes was questionable. He played that night, and then the first practice back, neither one of them's on the ice. We find out that they're going to be out of the lineup for a little while. Quinn Hughes at that point was week to week, and Elias Pettersson was, we thought, a week, give or take a day, I think was the quote from Rick Tocchet. Hughes misses 4 games. This is now 6 for Elias Pettersson. So the Pettersson ailment, whatever it is, has clearly kept him out longer than the captain. He practiced on Sunday in Montreal, took the morning skate in Montreal on Monday, was on the ice as part of the optional this morning as well, and yet still isn't playing. And if you saw Rick Tocchet after the morning skate, and maybe I'm reading between the lines here, I'm not sure, not out on the road, but Rick Tocchet said when it gets to this point, it's basically up to the player, which, so it's not in the coach's hands, it's not in the doctor's hands, it's now up to the player. He's practicing, but he's not playing. Where is Elias Pettersson in all of this?
Well, it's kind of like the Austin Matthews situation where Craig Berube did say it's up to Austin when he's going to play. I think that is the exact same situation here where the Canucks might know that he's available to play. He practiced in full, so clearly he's able to practice. Now it's going to be up to him whether he wants to go and suit up at some point here in the next few days, and they desperately need him. So I do expect that we see Elias Pettersson, but I thought that we were going to see him against Washington, and obviously that didn't happen. So we'll just have to wait and see tomorrow or Friday.
Yeah, and I want to believe that he'll play when he feels that he's ready and able to help this hockey club, but they need help too. So again, it would be easier, I think, to assess it all if you even knew what area of the body. We don't know. With Quinn, we knew it was a hand.
Yeah.
But playing with the splint or whatever that device is, he's able to play. Clearly, Elias Pettersson doesn't feel that he's able to play right now. So we'll see what a few more days, maybe by Friday, then into Toronto on Saturday. The Canucks catch a massive break here in the schedule, by the way. Not the fact that they're back-to-back Carolina-Toronto, but just given the nature of the firestorm that has been Canucks hockey of late. Mm-hmm. They play Friday and travel. They won't have a morning skate in Toronto. The media in Toronto, the jackals in the Toronto media won't have access to they won't be around the rink.
They were frothing at the mouth
to
go at the Canucks, but they're not going to be able to now.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear about them on Hockey Night
of course,
Canada, though.
100%.
Anyways, we'll see how things shake down here into Carolina on Friday for the Vancouver Canucks. All right, relatively quiet Wednesday night. A couple of early games. We told you that Chicago surprised Colorado by a score of 3-1, and the Canucks fall 2-1 to the Washington Capitals. Calgary and Los Angeles postponed. The other game is Florida in Salt Lake City against the Utah Hockey Club. A full slate of games, though, coming up on Thursday, which leads us to our Bet365 line of the night. What are you looking at? What has your attention?
Yeah, I know my man Jacob likes this one, too. Portion of the show brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. Canucks Conversation, Jeff, you and I here at Rink Wide Vancouver. Open account Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. Use code NATION, whatever the moment's never ordinary, at Bet365. I like the Leafs in Carolina. I like the Columbus Blue Jackets at home to the Kraken. and you got to like the Edmonton Oilers. So some pretty good odds there as the Toronto Maple Leafs are an underdog in Carolina to take on the Hurricanes.
I like stupid stuff in hockey.
This is stupid bad, so you should love this.
No. But there's so much sameness to a lot of the games and whatever. So I just like the fact that Toronto's at Carolina on Thursday. The Canucks are in Carolina on Friday. The Canucks are in Toronto on Saturday. So you got these three teams basically like an in-season little mini round robin. They won't hand out a trophy or a participation ribbon, but Canucks can get to Raleigh and watch and do a little live scouting, something you don't get an opportunity if you're Rick Tocchet and his coaching staff to do, in season very often, to watch your next two opponents go head to head. But that is the case. Leafs and the Canes on Thursday, the Canucks and the Canes on Friday, the Canucks and the Leafs on Saturday. And taking the Leafs in Carolina, I kind of like that because Carolina, like you look at the standings and they're a good team. Like they're well run, obviously. Look at the standings. They're a top 10 team in the National Hockey League. But after a 14-4 start to the season, Carolina is 10-11-2 in its last 23 hockey games.
Yeah, they're a team that could be had. Yeah.
And so you look at the overall record and you think, wow, top 10 team in the league. But so often it is, how's a team going in the here and now? And so, the Canucks are getting them back-to-back. They lost in Tampa last night. They gave up a last-minute goal to lose to the Bolts. So Friday's going to be 3-4 for the Carolina Hurricanes. And, we'll see if that plays into the Canucks' hands. Martin Nakash leads the team. He's got 47 points. He's having a terrific season. Sebastian Aho not far behind. He's got 43. And who would have pegged Jack Roslovic to lead the Carolina Hurricanes? But he's got 17 goals. So great opportunity for him there in Carolina, and he's making the most of it. Hurricanes beat the Canucks 4-3 in overtime, so they're on the list. They're one of many teams that have beaten the Canucks in overtime 4-3 back in October. Carolina is the best penalty-killing team in the National Hockey League. They also allow the fewest shots in the National Hockey League, an average of 25.1. So, Canucks got to 30 here, but it's going to be a challenge. It's a challenge for any team to get to 30 shots against the Carolina Hurricanes. One other note about Carolina. They've already used 5 goaltenders this season.
It's crazy.
They've had some injury issues. They've had some spotty performances. Pyotr Kochetkov is the guy, essentially. Spencer Martin looks like he's been replaced. Dustin Tokarski was signed mid-season. Frederik Andersen back at practice, recovering from knee surgery. So, it's been – Canucks always talk about defense by committee. It's been goaltender by committee there. But, and here's where trouble might come in for the Canucks and for the Leafs. Carolina 15-5 on home ice, 6-1-1 in their last 8. So they have had some success at home, and we'll see if they're able to carry that through here these next couple of games.
Yeah, no. I think the Canucks can go in and easily take that game, but you're going to need everybody, and they're going to definitely need Elias Pettersson. So that's the one where we're going to have to sit and wait here over the next 48 hours and see. You hope he takes morning skate, and you hope after morning skate, Rick Tocchet goes and says, yeah, he's in, as opposed to it's a game time decision. Because if it's a game time decision, I don't think it's going to be one that Canucks fans are going to like.
He's on IR, so they'll have to make a corresponding roster move.
Yeah.
Somebody would have to be deactivated. And look, they've got Guillaume Brisebois, they've got Artur Silovs, Demko. Like, I would think if Demko was the backup tonight, then that's probably an indication that he's going to get one of the starts here on the weekend. So maybe Artur Silovs is returned to Abbotsford to open up a roster spot for Elias Pettersson. They've got Brandstrom as well, so do they need 2 healthy defensemen? If Brisebois is not going to get back in, you could probably send him back to Abbotsford as well. But the fact of the matter is, it's not just as simple as Elias Pettersson saying, hey, I'm good to go. They're at their 23-man roster right now, so they will have to make a corresponding roster move. Just as I look through the final box score of this hockey game, 17 of the 18 Canucks skaters did have a shot. Carson Soucy was the only guy that did not get a shot on goal in this hockey game, but he did lead the team with 5 blocked shots, so contributing in that way. And, again, like, you don't like the fact that the Canucks come up empty-handed, but against a good Washington Capitals team, like, I don't want to go down moral victory boulevard.
Yeah.
But I do think that there were lots of things to like in this hockey game. It's just that again, hard to win when you only score one goal, and at that on power play. So 5-on-5 offense, it has to be a concern. Yes, they're missing Pettersson, and yes, they're missing Dakota Joshua, but there are enough guys that have scored at this level. Some guys just have to figure it out, buckle down, and find a way to put a puck in the net.
And you hope that happens on Friday.
That'll be the next opportunity for the Vancouver Canucks. I mentioned earlier that we would tell you about the latest developments with the Canucks Army viewing party. Well, you can jot down January 23rd. Come down to Greta Bar YVR. Going to have a fun night presented by Fountain Tire as we watch Vancouver take on Edmonton. Obviously, playoff rivalry from last spring. There's going to be exciting giveaways, hockey tickets, signed memorabilia, jerseys to be won. Doors open at 5. The puck drop at 6 o'clock. Tickets are $10, and that gets you access to all the action. It's all in support of One Broken Biker. There is a VIP option as well for $100. 4 people get reservations, and that includes entry to the event, Greta Burger, a beverage, plus a game card. So don't miss out. Secure your spot now, nationgear.ca, for an action-packed night with the Canucks Army crew on January 23rd, Vancouver in Edmonton. So we're looking forward to that, and hopefully you'll make plans to join us then. All right, well, let's see what stop number 3 brings. Canucks reach the midway. How does this happen this quickly? Like, we wait all summer for the the season to start, training camp, and young stars, and, well, not young stars anymore, but you wait all summer. Friday's the midway mark of the season.
It's crazy.
It does fly by.
We'll definitely do some comparing on this season and last season and stuff like that on Friday night for sure.
And I guess we'll see the rematch with the Capitals on the 25th. Yep. How much closer is Alex Ovechkin? He was held off the score sheet in this one. 22 to tie, 23 to stand alone as the NHL's all-time goal-scoring leader. So he's going to get there. Pretty good chance that it happens this season. And we'll just take stock of where he is in the chase of Wayne Gretzky's 894 when the Capitals roll into Vancouver on Saturday, January the 25th. All right, that's going to do it. A low-event hockey game. Not a lot of goals, but a number of talking points. I think we cover them off here. So for Jacob Lazar, our technical producer behind the scenes, for Irf, I am Jeff. As always, thanks so much for your support. Means the world to us here at Rink Wide. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't. Rate and review. We love to hear your feedback. So and all the social channels as well. Give those a follow if you would as well. All right, that's going to do it. 2-1 Capitals over the Canucks in overtime. This has been another edition of Rink Wide Vancouver.